The morning sky on Keshari Prime burned with an unnatural red glow that made everyone's skin crawl. Elder Mirai pressed her face against the observation deck's thick glass, watching her world die in slow motion. The massive star that had warmed their planet for millions of years was now their executioner, swelling like an angry wound across the heavens. "How much time do we have left?" she asked without turning around. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but everyone in the emergency command center heard her clearly. The silence that followed felt heavier than the toxic air outside. Chief Scientist Tamin cleared his throat nervously. His hands shook as he pulled up the latest readings on his tablet. "The stellar collapse is happening faster than we predicted. Maybe 3 days, maybe less. When it goes supernova, the radiation wave will cook everything within 50 light years. 3 days. Mirai closed her eyes and tried to imagine what 3 days meant for nearly 3 million souls. 3 days to say goodbye to everything they had ever known. 3 days to watch their children ask questions they couldn't answer. 3 days to face the reality that their entire civilization would soon be nothing but cosmic dust. Behind her, the communication officers worked frantically at their stations, sending out distress signals across the galaxy like desperate prayers, thrown into the void. The same message went out again and again, broadcast on every frequency, translated into dozens of languages. "This is Keshari Prime requesting immediate evacuation assistance. We have 2.7 million civilians in need of transport. We can pay any price. Please respond." The first reply came from the Altarian Federation within an hour. Admiral Vex's face appeared on the main screen, his blue-scaled features, arranged in what might have been sympathy if you didn't know better. "Keshari Prime, we have reviewed your situation. Unfortunately, our fleet assets are committed to more strategically important operations. We cannot justify the resource expenditure for a world of your limited galactic significance." Mirai felt something cold settle in her stomach. Limited galactic significance. That's what 3 million lives meant to one of the galaxy's greatest powers, numbers on a spreadsheet that didn't add up to profit. The Zephyrian Empire's response came 2 hours later. High Commander Zeltak didn't even bother with pleasantries. Evacuation deemed logistically unfeasible. Probability of successful rescue operation calculated at less than 12%. The Empire cannot risk valuable vessels for such minimal chance of success. By the end of the first day, 17 major civilizations had responded. 17 rejections, each wrapped in polite diplomatic language that couldn't hide the basic truth underneath. Keshari Prime wasn't worth saving. Team Corvin Collective's message hurt the most because they had been friends once, trade partners for over 2 centuries, allies in the Rim Wars, godparents to each other's colonies. Ambassador Kelvin's message was short and final. "Our hearts go out to the brave people of Keshari Prime. We will remember your contributions to galactic civilization. May your spirits find peace among the stars. Remember their contributions." As if they were already dead. Mirai walked through the evacuation shelters that night, past families huddled together on thin blankets, past children who had stopped asking when the rescue ships would come. The artificial lights flickered constantly, now as the power grid struggled against increasing electromagnetic interference from their dying star. Every few minutes, the emergency sirens would wail as another radiation spike hit their failing atmospheric processors. In the medical bay, she found Dr. Su Jin treating a young girl whose skin had started showing early signs of radiation poisoning. The child couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with bright, curious eyes that still held hope, despite everything happening around her. "When are the ships coming, Elder Mirai?" the little girl asked. "Mama says they're coming to take us. Somewhere safe." Mirai knelt beside the medical bed and took the child's small hand in hers, the words stuck in her throat like broken glass. "How do you tell a child that the galaxy has decided she doesn't matter enough to save?" "Soon, little one," she whispered, hating herself for the lie. "Very soon." Outside the medical bay, Dr. Su Jin pulled her aside. His face was grim in the flickering. "Emergency lighting. We're seeing radiation symptoms in 30% of the population already. The atmospheric processes are failing faster than we can repair them. Even if someone came for us now, I'm not sure how many would survive the journey." Mirai nodded numbly. She had run the calculations herself. Their world was becoming uninhabitable by the hour, and every major power in the galaxy had written them off as acceptable losses. Tomorrow she would have to make an announcement to her people. Tomorrow she would have to tell 3 million souls to prepare for death. But tonight, she stood on the observation deck again, watching their sun writhe in its death agony, and wondered if somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, there might still be someone who cared enough to try. 3 hours had passed since the last rejection message, and Elder Mireille sat alone in the command center, staring at the silent communication array. The night shift officers moved quietly around, their faces drawn with exhaustion and despair. Outside, Keshari Prime's twin moons glowed with an eerie orange light, reflecting the radiation pouring from their dying star. The communication panel suddenly crackled to life, making everyone in the room jump. Static filled the speakers before a clear voice cut through the interference. Keshari Prime, this is Captain Jiwon of the Terran vessel Harmony. We received your distress call. We're coming. Hold on. Mireille blinked hard, certain she was hallucinating, from stress and radiation exposure. Communications Officer Young-ho stared at his console in confusion, checking and rechecking the signal origin. Did someone just say they're coming? Whispered Dr. Taemin from across the room. The voice came again, clearer this time. Keshari Prime, please respond. This is the human ship Harmony. We're mobilizing our entire available fleet. Our fastest vessels will reach your system in approximately 67 hours. Can you maintain life support systems for that duration? Human? Mireille found her voice at last. I've never heard of your species. What star system are you from? We call our home Earth. It's in what you probably know as the Orion Spiral Arm. We're not one of the big galactic powers, but we heard your call and we're coming anyway. Young-ho was frantically searching the galactic databases, his fingers flying over his console. Elder Mireille, I'm finding very limited information about these humans. They appear to be a relatively new spacefaring species, maybe 300 years into interstellar travel. Their technology levels are significantly below galactic standard. The human captain's voice continued. We know we're not the most advanced civilization out there, but we have 43 ships, and we're loading them with every piece of evacuation equipment we can find. Our engineers are working around the clock to modify cargo holds for passenger transport. But why? Mireille asked, the question escaping before she could stop herself. Your species doesn't know us. We have no treaties, no trade agreements. What do you gain from this? There was a pause before Captain Jiwon responded. Ma'am, you have 3 million people about to die. That's all we need to know. Word of the human response spread through the galactic networks within hours. The reaction from the major powers was swift and predictable. Admiral Vex of the Altarian Federation appeared on the public broadcast channels, his scaled features twisted with what might have been amusement. These mammals from the Outer Rim think they can accomplish what experienced civilizations have deemed impossible, he announced to his staff during a recorded meeting that was somehow leaked to every news outlet in the galaxy. They lack the technology, the resources, and frankly the intelligence to understand what they're attempting. They'll arrive at Keshari Prime to find nothing but radioactive ash and their own graves. The Zephyrian Empire was equally dismissive. High Commander Zeltak issued an official statement that played on repeat across their territorial broadcasts. We strongly advise these humans against this futile gesture. Their primitive vessels will likely suffer catastrophic system failures long before reaching the target system. The Empire takes no responsibility for the inevitable loss of life resulting from this misguided rescue attempt. Even the supposedly neutral Galactic News Network treated the human response as a curiosity rather than legitimate aid. Their lead anchor, a pompous Quarian named Veltok, smirked as he delivered the evening report. In what can only be described as either admirable naivety or dangerous stupidity, an unknown species calling themselves humans has announced an evacuation mission to the doomed world of Keshari Prime. Military analysts give the operation less than a 5% chance of success. But down on Keshari Prime, something extraordinary was happening. For the first time in days, people were talking about something other than death. In the evacuation shelters, families gathered around communication devices, listening to updates about the approaching human fleet. Children who had been silent with fear began asking questions again. Dr. Sujin approached Mirai in the command center, holding a medical tablet. The psychological effect has been remarkable. We're seeing decreased stress hormones across the population. People are sleeping better, even eating more. Hope is literally keeping them alive longer. But what if the galaxy's right? Mirai asked quietly. What if these humans are just throwing their lives away? What if we're giving our people false hope? Through the observation windows, she could see people moving through the shelters with more energy than they'd shown in weeks. Parents were telling stories to their children again. Couples were making plans beyond the next few hours. The simple knowledge that someone cared enough to try had rekindled something essential in her people. Taemin looked up from his monitoring station. The stellar degradation continues on schedule. We have maybe 58 hours before the radiation levels become unsurvivable, even in the deep shelters. Mirai nodded and activated the general communication system. Her voice would reach every shelter, every family, every soul still breathing on their dying world. My people, I know many of you have heard about the human ships coming for us. I want you to know that this is real. There is a species out there that heard our call and decided we were worth saving. I don't know if they'll succeed. I don't know if their ships are strong enough or fast enough. But I know that for the first time in days, we have something we thought we'd lost forever. We have hope. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a miracle painted against the stars. Elder Mirai stood pressed against the observation deck windows, her breath fogging the glass as she watched dozens of ships materialize at the edge of their dying system. Behind her, the command center erupted in gasps and excited chatter for the first time in over a week. By the ancestors, whispered Dr. Taemin, his voice filled with wonder. They actually came. The ships weren't what anyone expected. There were no sleek military vessels or gleaming diplomatic cruisers cutting through space with advanced technology. Instead, the human fleet looked like a collection of workhorses, converted cargo haulers with bulky modifications welded to their hulls, passenger liners stretched and reinforced with extra life support pods, and what appeared to be mining vessels retrofitted with evacuation equipment. Captain Jiwon's voice filled the command center, crackling slightly through the electromagnetic interference from their unstable star. Keshari Prime, this is the human evacuation fleet. We have 43 vessels with a combined crew of 22,000 volunteers, beginning immediate descent to surface for evacuation operations. Volunteers? Mirai asked, her translator, picking up the word but not quite the meaning behind it. Every single person on these ships chose to be here, came the reply. We put out a call across human space for crews willing to risk their lives for strangers. We had to turn people away. The first shuttles began their descent through Keshari's increasingly toxic atmosphere. Mirai watched the small craft navigate through radiation storms that should have fried their electronics, their pilots somehow finding clear paths through the electromagnetic chaos surrounding their world. Emergency sirens wailed constantly now as their planetary defense grid detected dangerous radiation levels, but the human shuttles kept coming. The first shuttle touched down in the central evacuation zone, its hull scarred and blackened from atmospheric entry. The landing ramp dropped with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and the first humans stepped onto Keshari Prime. They were smaller than Mirai had expected, bipedal mammals with soft-looking skin and expressive faces visible through the transparent visors of their environmental suits. But what struck her most was their eyes. Even through the protective gear, she could see determination mixed with something else. Compassion, maybe, or simple, stubborn refusal to give up. A human woman approached the reception area where Mirai and her staff waited. Her suit bore insignia that might have indicated rank, and her translator crackled as she spoke. Elder Mirai, I'm Commander Hyejin. We're here to get your people out. Commander, the radiation levels are already beyond safe limits for most species, Mirai warned. Your people will suffer cellular damage within hours of exposure. Hyejin pulled off her helmet, revealing a face that looked young but carried the weight of serious responsibility. Her hair was dark and pulled back practically, and when she smiled, it transformed her entire expression. Ma'am, every person on this mission knew the risks before they volunteered. We've modified our medical bays with radiation treatment protocols, and our doctors have been studying your species' physiology for the past 3 days. We're as ready as we can be." What happened next challenged everything Mirai thought she knew about how civilized species operated. The humans didn't establish command hierarchies or demand tribute for their services. They didn't negotiate favorable trade agreements or claim territorial rights. They simply went to work. Human medics set up treatment stations in the evacuation, shelters working alongside Kasharian doctors to treat radiation sickness. Their equipment wasn't the most advanced Mirai had ever seen, but it was practical and effective. More importantly, the humans shared everything freely, teaching Kasharian medical staff how to operate their devices and explaining their treatment protocols. In the engineering sections, human technicians worked shoulder to shoulder with Kasharian engineers, jury-rigging solutions to problems that had seemed impossible. When the main atmospheric processor failed completely, a human engineer named Minho somehow managed to reroute power through secondary systems nobody had even known existed. "How did you know that would work?" asked Chief Engineer Junho, staring at the restored life support readings in amazement. Minho wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of grease across his face. "Honestly, I didn't, but doing something seemed better than doing nothing." The evacuation began in earnest as more shuttles arrived. But there was a problem. Even with 43 ships, the humans didn't have enough space to evacuate everyone. The math was simple and brutal. 2.7 million refugees and transport capacity for maybe 2 million. That's when the humans did something that left Mirai speechless. Without orders or discussion, crew members began reducing their own life support allocations. They opened crew quarters to refugees, compressed their own living spaces, and voluntarily put themselves on reduced rations to make room for more Kasharians. "You two can't do this," Mirai protested to Commander Heejin. "Your people need those resources for the journey back to human space." "Elder Mirai, we didn't come this far to leave anyone behind," Heejin replied firmly. "We'll make it work." Throughout the evacuation, Mirai watched human crew members literally giving the shirts off their backs to Kasharian children who were cold and frightened. She saw human doctors treating injured refugees while ignoring their own radiation burns. She witnessed human engineers holding failing systems together with their bare hands as the star's death throes intensified around them. But what amazed her most was how they worked together. There was no hierarchy based on species or technology level. Humans and Kasharians collaborated as equals, sharing knowledge and resources without hesitation. Young Kasharian children played games with human crew members during loading breaks, their laughter echoing through the evacuation centers despite the chaos around them. As the final shuttles prepared to depart, Kashari's star began its terminal collapse phase. The sky turned a brilliant, deadly white as stellar material started ejecting into space. The humans had arrived with just hours to spare, and now they were racing against the ultimate deadline. The final evacuation shuttles raced through Kashari's burning atmosphere as their star entered its death spiral. Elder Mirai found herself pressed against a viewing port aboard the human flagship Harmony, surrounded by thousands of other refugees as they watched their world's final moments. The ship vibrated constantly from the electromagnetic storms raging through the system, and emergency lights cast eerie shadows across the crowded corridors. "All vessels, this is Captain G1. The ship's communication system crackled. "Final shuttle docking in 90 seconds. Jump drives are charging across the fleet. We're cutting this very close, people." Through the thick transparent steel, Mirai could see the entire human evacuation fleet spread across space, like a protective wall between the refugees and their dying star. Cargo ships bulged with extra hull modifications, passenger liners stretched beyond their design limits, and converted mining vessels that had been transformed into arc ships overnight. Every vessel blazed with external lights, creating a constellation of hope against the cosmic darkness. Navigation Officer Seojun's voice echoed through the bridge speakers. "Captain, we have a problem. 17 ships in the rear formation are showing critical engine damage from radiation exposure. Their jump drives aren't charging properly." Mirai felt her heart sink as the terrible mathematics of the situation became clear. Some ships wouldn't be able to achieve safe distance before the supernova. The humans had known this was possible, had planned for acceptable losses, but now faced the reality of which ships would be left behind. "Identify the affected vessels," Captain Jiwon ordered, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "The cargo hauler Determination, passenger liner New Hope, mining vessel Solidarity, and 14 others," Seojin reported. "Combined crew complement of 9,736 personnel." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of overloaded systems and the distant sound of families talking quietly in the refugee sections. Nearly 10,000 humans were about to die because their ships had absorbed too much radiation while evacuating strangers. Then something extraordinary happened. Commander Hyejin's voice came through the communication system from one of the damaged ships. "Captain Jiwon, this is Hyejin aboard the New Hope. We've discussed it with our crew, and we're volunteering to remain behind as rear guard. We'll buy the evacuation convoy extra time to achieve safe jump distance." Other voices began joining the communication channel. "This is Captain Do-hyun of the Determination. We're staying too. Engineering vessel Compassion, requesting permission to join the rear guard formation. Mining ship Brotherhood reporting ready to hold position. One by one, the 17 damaged ships positioned themselves between the evacuation fleet and the unstable star." Mirai watched through the viewing port as human vessels deliberately moved toward danger, their crews making the conscious choice to sacrifice themselves for refugees they had never met before this week. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. But even as she spoke, she knew the humans had already made their decision. Captain Jiwon's voice filled the communication channels one final time. "All rearguard vessels, the evacuation convoy is ready for emergency jump. You have given 3 million souls the chance to see tomorrow. Your families will know what you chose here, and they will know it mattered." Commander Hyejin's reply came through clearly despite the increasing interference. "Tell them we weren't heroes. Tell them we were just people who decided this was the right thing to do." The star exploded. The detonation started as a brilliant point of light that expanded into a sphere of destruction, traveling at nearly the speed of light itself. Mirai watched in horror as the 17 human ships vanished instantly, consumed by energies that could sterilize entire solar systems. The shockwave hit moments later, a wall of radiation and superheated plasma that would have killed everyone if not for those ships absorbing the initial impact. The evacuation fleet jumped to hyperspace just as the second wave of destruction reached their position. In the span of 30 seconds, nearly 10,000 humans had died to save people they had known for less than a week. During the long journey toward human space, Mirai walked through the refugee sections of the Harmony, trying to process what she had witnessed. Kasharian families occupied every available space, sleeping in corridors, eating meals in repurposed storage bays, and somehow finding ways to smile despite losing everything they had ever known. She found Captain Jiwon in the ship's small observation lounge, staring out at the stars streaming past during their hyperspace transit. The captain looked older than her years, carrying the weight of command decisions that no one should have to make. "Why?" Mirai asked, settling into the chair beside her. "Your species had nothing to gain from saving us. You lost nearly 10,000 lives for strangers." Jiwon was quiet for a long time, watching the light patterns of hyperspace swirl past. The windows. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but certain. "My grandmother survived the Mumbai floods when she was 7 years old. Strangers pulled her from the water when her family's building collapsed. She used to tell me that civilization isn't measured by how advanced your technology becomes, but by whether you remember to help each other when everything falls apart." "But the cost," Mirai protested. "Those people had families, children, dreams, of their own." "They did," Jiwon agreed, "and they chose to make sure your children would have the chance to dream too." Mirai felt tears burning her eyes as the full weight of the human sacrifice settled in her heart. While the galaxy's great powers had calculated profit margins and strategic value, these humans had asked a much simpler question. What was the right thing to do? The answer had cost them everything, but somehow watching Kasharian children play with human crew members in the ship's common areas, Mirai understood that some prices were worth paying. 6 months after the Kashari rescue, Elder Mirai stood before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Grand Assembly Hall on Proxima Station buzzed with tension as representatives from hundreds of worlds watched her approach the central podium. She had requested this emergency session, and now every major civilization wanted to hear what the survivor had to say. The Altarian delegation sat in their traditional blue robes, Admiral Vex's scaled features arranged in barely concealed irritation. The Zephyrian Empire's representatives whispered among themselves, their crystalline forms catching the chamber's lights. Even the mysterious ethereal collective had sent observers, their energy beings flickering with what might have been curiosity. "Honored delegates," Mireille began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "6 months ago, my world faced extinction. We sent distress calls to every major power in this assembly. Today I want to share with you exactly what happened." She activated the holographic display system, filling the air above the assembly, with communication logs, timestamp records, and evacuation footage. The first image showed Kashari Prime in its final days, the dying star casting an angry red glow across the agricultural world that had been home to nearly 3 million souls. "We received 47 responses to our distress calls," Mireille continued, her words measured and calm. 46 of you calculated the cost and found us wanting. You weighed our lives against your resources and decided we weren't worth the risk." Admiral Vex shifted uncomfortably in his seat as his own rejection message played for the entire assembly to hear. The Zephyrian delegation's crystalline forms dimmed slightly as their dismissive response echoed through the chamber. "One species responded differently," Mireille said, and the holographic display showed the human fleet materializing at the edge of the Kashari system. They had primitive technology by your standards. Their ships were converted cargo haulers and passenger liners. They had no strategic interest in our world, no trade agreements, no political alliances. They had never even heard of us before. Our distress call. The footage showed human shuttles descending through deadly radiation, crews working in environmental suits while their own bodies absorbed cellular damage. It showed human medics treating Kasharian children while ignoring their own radiation burns. It showed human engineers literally holding failing systems together with their bare hands. The humans lost 9,736 lives to save strangers they had never met. Mireille's voice broke slightly as she spoke the number. They asked for nothing in return. No territory, no tribute, no trade concessions. They simply heard our call and decided we were worth saving. A murmur ran through the assembly as the implications began to sink in. The footage continued, showing the final moments as 17 human ships positioned themselves between the evacuation fleet and the exploding star, their crews choosing certain death to buy a few extra seconds for the refugees to escape. Ambassador. Kelvin of the Corvan Collective stood slowly, his forearms spread in a gesture of formal address. "Elder Miri, while the human response was an admirable, surely you understand that established civilizations must consider the broader implications of such actions. Resources are finite, risks must be calculated." "Resources are finite," Miri agreed, turning to face the Corvan delegation. The humans understood that better than anyone. They were a young civilization with limited ships and basic technology, yet they found a way to save nearly 3 million lives, while you found excuses to save none. The political earthquake that followed began immediately. Within hours of Mireille's address, the Galactic Trade Council received formal notifications from over 40 worlds announcing the suspension of contracts with the Altarian Federation. The Zephyrian Empire's merchant vessels found their docking requests denied at ports throughout the Outer Rim territories. Young civilizations that had once competed for the attention of the major powers began redirecting their diplomatic overtures toward human space. The Andromedan Republic, barely 50 years into interstellar travel, announced their intention to join what they called the Human Compassion Compact. The Vega Collective followed within days, then the Centauri Alliance. Admiral Vex found his mighty war fleets increasingly irrelevant, as former client states simply stopped requesting Altarian protection. Trade routes that had flowed toward the galactic core for millennia began shifting toward the Outer Rim, following the example of species who valued life over profit margins. The transformation wasn't limited to politics and trade. young species, throughout the galaxy, began adopting what became known as the human standard in their own foreign policies. When the agricultural world of Theta Pavonis faced crop failure and starvation, 3 different civilizations launched aid missions, without being asked. When the mining colonies of the Kepler system were threatened by asteroid impacts, volunteer rescue fleets appeared from across known space. Dr. Jinsu, a human sociologist studying the phenomenon, called it the greatest shift in galactic civilization since the formation of the first trade leagues. The idea that advanced civilizations should help those in need, regardless of strategic value, spread like wildfire through younger species eager to prove their own compassion. 1 year after the rescue, Captain Jiwon walked through the gardens of New Kashari, the settlement that had grown around the refugee camps on the human colony world of Harmony Station. Kasharian children played alongside human youngsters, their laughter echoing through the carefully tended groves that reminded the survivors of their lost homeworld. Elder Mirai found her there, watching the children chase each other through the flowering trees. The Kasharian leader now served as the first Compassion Compact Council representative, helping coordinate aid missions throughout the galaxy. The old powers are learning to adapt, Mirai reported. The Altarian Federation announced their new humanitarian aid program last week. The Zephyrian Empire is establishing refugee assistance protocols. Even the Ethereal Collective has begun contributing resources to disaster relief efforts. Captain Jiwon smiled, her face bearing the faint scars that marked all survivors of the Kashari mission. My grandmother always said that people learn more from what you do than what you say. Maybe we didn't just save your people. Maybe we reminded the galaxy what civilization actually means. As the twin suns of Harmony Station set over their shared world, both species looked toward a future where the measure of advancement wasn't military strength or technological superiority, but the simple willingness to help when help was needed most. The galaxy had found a new standard, and it was written in the sacrifice of those who chose compassion over calculation,